own reproductive health choices. And by the end of the day, we'll be able to see that it's not about the number, it's about the quality of life. Thank you.
Mike, thank you very much, sir. I don't know what you gathered from that report. I think for me, three things. Three things. The first one being that a country can have a low fertility rate, but a high? Yes, high migration, isn't it? Very good. The second I heard, and this is a bit of a tricky one, is that men are the ones who think, largely, that we are having what? A very high population, right? So this is bringing us back to reproductive health rights for women. The third I had, which is again for my colleagues at the back, perspective in reporting and how that impacts what people and what nations think about this. Thank you so much, sir, for that and for keeping time. I'd now like to welcome the Deputy Director at the National Council for Population and Development, Mr. Nzomo Mulatya, to present now the Kenya report. Let's applaud.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, EPS, General NCPD, UNFPA, Kenya Country Representative. I'll now have the pleasure to present to you the issues that were covered in the State of Kenya Population Report. And these issues are domestication, what has been presented by Gure on the State of World Population Report 2023. And these issues these are the concerns, and these concerns are related to the present and future trends in environment, demographic, health, socioeconomic, and environmental indicators, which Kenya has registered improvement over the years. Yeah, the first, when you look at this, some of the anxieties which were presented in the report regarding population issue is that, you know, when you look at this graph, you see that we are making the right progress. We are making progress in the reduction of population growth rates. We have moved from, you know, the highest 3.8, which was the highest in the world in the year 1979, and we are now 2.2% per annum. But the question which we're asking ourselves here is that is Kenya's population size too large or too small, given that it has increased in the last 15 years from 10.9 million in 1969 to 47.6 million in 2019, and is projected to reach 70.1 million in 2045. You know, that's a concern which we are having. Yeah, and this opens up a debate on whether, you know, we are likely, you know, whether our population is too large or too small. The other issue which has been raised regarding the pace of the Kenyan population increase is, will Kenyan population shrink or continue growing given the decreasing in the census population growth rate from 2.9 per annum between 1989 and 2009 to 2.3 per annum between 2009 and 2019. These are the debates which are, you know, shaping discourses, especially in the area of population and development. And then when you look at the actual and projected population, the projected population by 2045 is projected to reach 70.1 million. So the question here is the current and future increase or decline in fertility and population growth likely to cause negative outcomes such as economic decline, environmental degradation, resource depletion, poverty, and social unrest? You know, those are the questions we're asking ourselves as we see, you know, this graph here showing this exponential growth in our population size. Then when you look at the actual and projected total fertility rate for Kenya, you find that we are now moving towards replacement level fertility. And the question we're asking ourselves here is that, will Kenya's population now shrink or continue growing, given this declining fertility from an average 7 children per woman in 1989 to 3 children per woman in 2011, and which is also projected to reach 2.1, that is replacement level fertility by the year 2050. Then when you look at this fertility differential, and also contraceptive use, you'll find that we are also making progress in the area of contraceptive use. And fertility is high among compared. Family planning, we are also making progress, and this has contributed much to the decline in our fertility levels. When you look at the life expectancy, we have registered improvement in quality of life of our people. But the question which you're asking ourselves here is Kenya likely to experience aging crisis of the developed world, given the increasing proportion of older persons from 5% in 2009 to 5.8% in 2019? No, this is a question we're asking ourselves. Are we likely now to experience this crisis? Then, with regard to trends in Kenyan population selected age groups, that is age group 0 to 14, 15 to 60, and then the aging, that is 60 plus. Yeah, you'll find that the 0 to 14 is coming down. And then 15 to 60, which is the working age population, is also increasing. And the aging is also increasing. But then the question which we're asking ourselves here is that, is Kenya likely to create enough jobs and offer decent employment, given that the proportion of children aged 0 to 14 years has declined from 47.3% in 1989 to 39% of the total population in 2019, while those of the working age group increased, that is 15 to 64, increased from 47.8 to 55.3 in the same period. The other question which you're asking ourselves here is Kenya likely to experience aging crisis of the developed world, given the increasing proportion of older persons? Those are the questions which you're asking ourselves. And when you look at the proportion of the youth, we have reached an exponential growth, meaning that it's increasing. The population of the youth is increasing, and also when you look at the labor force participation among the youth, you'll find that overall unemployment and the proportion of unemployed males is higher than that of female in the age group 15 to 34 categories. So this is an area of concern with regard to the labor force participation among our youth. And also you see that unemployment among the youth, about 800,000 youth entering the job market in Kenya each year. Have we provided enough, are we putting in place adequate intervention to create more jobs for the youth? That's the question we're asking ourselves. And then these youth are also involved in drug and substance abuse, which is very high among, that's 15 to 24 years. This data was derived from Kenya Demographic and Health Survey. And then when you look at the proportion of the elderly in Kenya, 57% of these elderly are living in absolute poverty. These are issues which are also concerned to us and which have been expressed in the State of Kenya Population Report. And then when you look at conflict among the elderly, you'll find that 11% of the elder persons living with the minors only, 21% of older persons are living alone, 14% of older persons in Kenya have health insurance, and then 80% of older persons in Kenya have disability. So when you look at the childhood mortality, we are making progress because we are registered a downward trend. The other population anxieties which are also been documented in this report, that is Kenya likely, the Kenyan population likely to experience or increasing decline in fertility and premature death as a result of emerging pandemic, non-communicable and incurable diseases. The other area of concern is that gender-based violence likely to increase or decrease with an increase in women empowerment, given the increasing number of women in decision-making positions in the country. And the other one is the current rapid urbanization due to increasing rural-urban migration, likely to offer important opportunities for economic and social development, given that we have a higher proportion of our people living in urban slums. The other question is, are the current efforts in addressing climate change and its effect likely to improve the quality of life of the Kenyan population? So these are, when you look at the diseases and premature death, these are statistics which we have been derived from the Ministry of Health. And the anxiety about a pandemics often stems from the fear of illness and death, as well as concerns about the disruption of daily life, social isolation, and economic hardship. When you look at the AIDS-related deaths, you find that Kenya, its strategic framework, 2020 to 2021, 2024, 2025, outlines the need to reduce the new HIV infection by 75% by 2025. However, in 2021, new HIV infection increased by 7.3%. Women bear the brunt of the HIV burden, with 70% of all the new infections occurring in women and girls. When you look at the distribution of cancer burden, yeah, you find that cancer has been a major, one of the leading killer disease in our country. And Kenya mortality and the cause of death report 2021 shows that the leading cancer-related deaths were esophagus cancer at 3%, cervical cancer at 10%, breast cancer at 10%, and liver cancer at 9%. Now, with regard to road traffic accident, this is also another area of concern with regard to population issue, and it caused anxiety due to the fact that road accident is related to the fear of being involved in or witnessing a traffic collision when driving or walking, riding, cycling. People may worry about the financial and legal consequences of being involved in an accident, as well as emotional trauma that may result from such experience. And if you look at the graph, you know, it's upward trend, showing that road traffic accidents is one of the leading cause of mortality in our country, morbidity and mortality in our country. When you look at violence among women in Kenya, you find that majority of those who suffer sexual gender-based violence, which occurs in all populations, have to experience serious consequences such as cuts, you know, bruises, eye injuries, sprains, and dislocation, burns, deep wounds, broken bones, teeth, and other serious injuries, which quite often lead to death. And economic empowerment is a key factor in the fight towards ending sexual gender-based violence against women and girls. And income-generating activity increase women again empowered at home, thereby reducing their vulnerability to violence. So it's also being perpetrated on men. And if you look at the DHS data, shows that although it has come down, but it's still high. And in many countries, including Kenya, men are often socialized into tolerating and rationalizing violence and to remain silent about it when it occurs. You know, it is happening. It's only that the men don't come out publicly to talk about it. I've talked about urbanization. We are experiencing rapid rural urban migration. International migration in Kenya is negligible. And that's why, although it's very important, because of the remittances which people living in diaspora remit to our country, which helps us, the country, to acquire foreign exchange. On the issues of climate change, the consequences of climate change are known, and we have been, this is one area where the country is at risk, especially with regard to human health, and this has negative effects on the economy, which is dependent on climate-sensitive sectors such as agriculture, water, energy, tourism, and wildlife. In conclusion, I like to share with you these two graphs, 2009 census and 2019 census. And when you look at the two graphs show that the Kenya population age structure is becoming more favorable for the annexing of demographic dividend. As I mentioned earlier, the proportion of the working age population, you know, is very large, which is very high. And we need to invest on our youth, that is our youth bunch, in order for us to annex the demographic dividend, which will enable the country, which will spark the country's economic growth. And the recommended actions contained in the State of Kenya Population Report 2023 are necessary for the country to sustain the gains achieved over the years and further improve the quality of life of the Kenyan population. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. I'd now like to request some assistance as we set up for the panel on stage. I would also like to kindly request our participants to help me redeem the time with their concise and expert responses. Please welcome on stage Bernard Onyango. He's a Senior Research and Policy Analyst at the Africa Institute for Development Policy. Dr. Joan Oracha, the Country Director for Marie Stopes, Kenya. Dr. James Kalga, Senior Lecturer at the Institute of Climate Change and Adaptation at the University of Nairobi, and Professor Caleb Mireri, a Technical Advisor, Urban Development in the Kenya Urban Support Program. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage. Let's welcome them with applause. Thank you. Our topic this morning is unlocking the demographic dividend, challenges and opportunities in a changing world. And so let's begin, and I'd like to begin with you, Bernard, to set the stage for us, if you would. The broad question that we have with a figure like 8 billion is whether we can still build thriving and inclusive societies, isn't it? So for you, I'd ask, the State of Kenya Population Report shows that Kenya has seen that decline, as we saw, in the birth rates. Women had an average of 8 children nearly 50 years ago. That is not the case now. It's declined to an average of 3.4 children in the last 4 years. So Bernard, if you'd kick us off then, what does that mean for Kenya in terms of demographic change? Check.
Okay, thank you. All right. Yeah, so I think as you rightly pointed out, the population growth rate in the country has been coming down, partly because we are having couples deciding to have smaller families. And so you see in the late 70s, actually, Kenya was highlighted as being the country, that had the highest fertility rates in the world, and now we've come down to 3.4, about 3.4 children per woman. So what that means is that the population growth rate has also come down. I think we saw there it's at about 2.2%. But 2.2%, so, and I know that in the spirit of whether there is this population anxiety, I've definitely seen, and we've seen in the media, even amongst leaders, people talking about, okay, we need to slow down on having smaller families. Let's get our numbers up. The reality is that the population of the country is still going to grow for decades to come. If you look at a 2% population growth rate, when you calculate that actually a 2% population growth rate leads to a doubling of the population in about 35 years' time. And as you saw,
from the numbers you saw there. In 2045, we are talking about Kenya's population being closer to 70 million, and probably by 2050 closer to about 80 million. So that's that's a big jump from where we are. We're probably around 50 million now, given that the census was a few years back. So that's a big jump, and it has implications. It has implications for planning purposes, because you have to plan for these numbers. It has implications for things such as education. You have to educate these people. You have to find employment, or people have to get employment and be involved in growing the economy. If not, then it becomes a challenge.
Right. Let me pause you there. So we're not doing badly, is what I'm hearing you say. And often when the birth rates fall, I think there's a talk of that demographic dividend. And you've shown us how big it will be in the next couple of years. From your perspective, is Kenya prepared to harness that demographic dividend, and what policies do you think are needed, or have you seen that are in place to leverage the youth bulge in particular?
So because the child dependency burden is coming down, so that's one of the things that really will enable us to harness the demographic dividend. So just by the fact that we are having fewer proportion of people under 15, for example, which has come down from 43% to about 39% in the last 10 years, means that we have, there's an advantage on that, right? You reduce the dependency burden. However, now, as we say that we are going to harness the dividend, yes, but the question is, will we maximize the dividend? And for us to maximize the dividend, we have to make the right investments. We have to make the investments in human capital development. We have to make investments in making sure that people are employed. So when we talk about employment now, there's employment and there's underemployment. There's a lot of underemployment in the country today. And then there are also a lot of people, we can say we have a lot of young people who are in the working ages, but a lot of people are staying with their parents up to their 30s. While we see that in developed countries, by the time people are really in their early 20s, they're independent. So what we need to do is to make those investments. And I think policy-wise, we are on the right track. You see the focus is on the right thing. I think that the question is about the implementation.
All right, could you highlight maybe one or two policies that you think are putting us on track? And I am curious, I'm sure you are, why are more young people staying at home? Very briefly. And I think I also noticed that it is women who are a majority in the workforce. If you could touch on that briefly, and specifically on the policies that you think get us on the right track.
As you know, the country is really working on serious reforms in the education sector. So you talk about the CPC, you talk about investing in TVET, for example. So part of that is really to make sure that people have the